Ole Miss over under win total of 7.5. This is another one with heavily priced. We had -140 to the over for Alabama, -170 for Texas A&M, 7.5 for the Rebs, and it is -150 to the over, +120 to the under. Non-con, Troy, Central Arkansas, at Georgia Tech, and Tulsa. The draw from the East, Kentucky at home, Vanderbilt on the road. Then when we get into division play, the Ole Miss will be at LSU, at Texas A&M, at Arkansas, with Auburn, Alabama, and Mississippi State coming to town. Another team that leaned heavily on the transfer portal, Jackson Dart, coming in as he and Luke Altmaier are the quarterback room without Matt Corral. We also got to see Zach Evans, the former TCU running back. He has landed at Ole Miss. Defensively, we lost Sam Williams, lost some very important defenders. We also lost DJ Durkin was there last year, right? He was at Texas A&M now. Yep. Yeah. Also lost DJ Durkin as defensive coordinator. So after what was truly a historic season for Ole Miss football, Lane Kiffin leading the Rebs all the way into the New Year's Six, what are we expecting with the encore, and what are we doing with over under 7.5?
I went first last one. Somebody else go.
Under.
I'll go. Go. Yeah. Explain.
I think defensive losses are going to be significant. I think that to imagine that everything is going to click offensively, it requires us to be, very confident that you're going to be able to just plug and play. We also lost Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator who's been there, who is now at Oklahoma. I think there is still, as Bud mentioned, a high level of athleticism. There is still enough for Ole Miss to go and be dangerous, especially with the way that Lane Kiffin can, draw things up, call plays, try to scheme against some of these better defenses. But I just don't think that this is a team compared to the rest of those teams in the middle of that division, compared to an Arkansas, compared to an LSU, maybe LSU, Mississippi State more than LSU. But as we look at this part of the SEC West, I don't think that they are definitively better. And when I have all these question marks and I think that there might be a chance of a regression, especially after a huge season, I end up leaning on the other side of some of these toss-up games. I mean, Ole Miss could be 1-3 on the road in SEC play. They could go to LSU and lose, go to Texas A&M and lose. They could go to Arkansas and lose. You start to see these losses add up. Alabama, I'm going to give that to Alabama. Kentucky, that's not a guaranteed win, even with that being at home. So I'm going under here.
See, I'm with you. I expect there to be regression off a 10-2 season. It's just, I think that regression is still going to finish with them going over their win total of 7.5. I think that this could be like an 8-4 team. I think they could start 7-0. I don't think that is all that unrealistic, because if you look at their first 7 games, they've got 2 on the road, Georgia Tech and Vandy. The home games are Troy, Central Arkansas, Tulsa. Those are 3 wins. They're going to beat Georgia Tech. They're starting 4-0.
Right.
Then you get Kentucky at home on homecoming. I agree. That's not a gimme, but I think that that's a game that at home the Rebels can win. I think they're going to probably beat Vandy on the road. And I think Auburn at home, they can win. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at a team that's going to be like 7-0, 6-1, who needs to get to 1 or 2 wins in that stretch. And you're right. That is when things really start to kind of pick up as far as the level of difficulty, because you get LSU and A&M back-to-back on the road before your bye. There's a very good chance you're losing both of those games. You're coming off the bye against Alabama. Very good chance you're losing that game. Arkansas on the road, going to be a tough test, but it's winnable. And then, of course, the Egg Bowl is the Egg Bowl. I think this team is going to be worse than last year record-wise. I don't know if it's going to actually be a worse team, but I think 8-4 is more likely than 7-5. So I'm on the over.
I'm on the over as well. Now, this is not a bet for me. It's just like a slight over edge. I don't love the, 140? There you go, Jagnol. Mm-hmm. I definitely don't want the under at this price. It's like a small edge. I looked at this, I'm like, damn, I don't like what my simulator is spitting out. And I kind of dug into the guts of why it is. And part of it is because I just have them as really overwhelming favorites in their first 4 games. So I think they really have almost a guaranteed 4-0. I actually have the likelihood of them starting 6-0 as extremely high. And to me, the order of these games is important because of how many transfers Ole Miss took, right? If they had to play a tougher early schedule, it would bother me because I worry a little bit about some of the chemistry of this team, given that they are going to start 8 or 9 transfers potentially. But they've got some real potential impact guys. I think Jared Ivey coming in on the defensive line should help them a lot. Their secondary, they took a lot of dudes. They got Isheem Young from Iowa State. Ladarius Tennyson's a pretty good athlete from Auburn. I'm not really sure how much he's going to play. Obviously, I trust Lane Kiffin to score points. I think they have a nice option there in Luke Altmaier at quarterback. I'm not even sure it's going to be Jackson Dart. I think Altmaier's potentially going to beat him out. And then the thing that really put this over the top for me was I was talking to Cole Kubelik on the SC Network at SC Media Day, and he was just singing the praises of that Ole Miss offensive line and what they have returning. And he's on the voting committee for the Joe Moore Award. He really knows offensive lines well. And I was like, all right, sometimes it's tough to tell because they run so much funky stuff, but he really likes him. They add Mason Brooks, the transfer from Western Kentucky, who was a very good player for the Hilltoppers last year. I'm going to take the over here. I think that early, September, early October schedule really helps.
Have you found an SEC network analyst who'll say something bad about the SEC?
Whoa! Not on TV.
Cole. He's good. He's one of the best in the business.
Yeah.
I'm just messing with him. I'm on the under. I'm going with more of the historical trend of where this program has been. I think it's headed in the right direction. I agree with you guys. So and I think this division more so than most, like a lot of them, you go through and you mark up your wins and your losses, and then you have toss-up games. This one, more than any, I have the least amount of automatic wins and automatic losses in this division, period, outside of Alabama. You're like, man, and then there's a lot of toss-up games. I think Bud made some really good points about the keeping things together, getting those transfers up to speed. I don't know, Matt Corral was really good last year. I think he was a really good quarterback that I think there could be a little bit of a setback in a very quarterback-driven system. If you can run the ball, that helps. I just think they're going 7-5. And I like the value at plus 120. I don't love minus 150 on the over. So give me the under on the Rebs.
The quarterback position is significant. Yeah, I'm with you, Danny. And we don't even know for sure that Jackson Dart is going to be the starting quarterback? Like it might be Luke.
I just said it's going to be Altmaier, right?
Yeah.
Could be. And honestly, I don't think that's an awful thing. Like, I feel like there's a narrative that's like, whoa, Jackson Dart hasn't been able to win the starting job there. That's bad news. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case. It could just be very good news that Altmaier is playing well.
There's also, I've covered Lane Kiffin a few times, a couple times at FAU. He doesn't exactly run the tightest ship, if you know what I mean. Like it is loose. And if there were coordinators that were like, it's not only Matt Corral, the coordinators, which we did mention, I think that's big. There's an adjustment to coaching under a coach that's a little more loosey-goosey that and he's embraced all of the new era athlete and NIL and tweeting and having fun, which is a good thing. But I'm curious to see if he can replicate it, or, I mean, it doesn't have to replicate last year to get the over. I'm curious to know what happens. They start strong and they lose a couple games, couple back-to-back road games there towards the down, towards the stretch. I think it'd be very interesting at LSU and at Texas A&M. That's where I wonder if they go back-to-back losses, then what happens? Then it's 3 in a row. Like, could things crumble towards the end of the season? You embrace those players with NIL. Curious to know what happens. Like, oh, we're not going back to a New Year's Six. Like, what type of mindset is the team in?
We're reuniting with Baby Schematic Advantage after 2 years with USF. Charlie Weiss Jr. comes over and gets to get some co-OC job. They were together at FAU, and now he's an SEC coordinator. Big stuff.
I think Danny's point's a really good one. Is there a bigger issue going on there that caused more than half the staff to turn over after a Sugar Bowl year?
I don't know. Well, so
is there collapse potential of a team of mercenaries?
It's not like Ole Miss can't match offers. They would do what they want to keep. They can spend,
especially in the transfer market. Ole Miss is playing for keeps in the transfer market.
So coaches, like if
I'm talking about the coaches
side,
market,
not really.
They can match all those salaries.
Oh, right.
Sorry,
because Durkin going to Texas A&M, it's the Texas A&M DC job. Like that was, Elko got left Notre Dame to go to that job. Like it is coming with a big salary. It is obviously valued in the marketplace. Lebby is going to Oklahoma like that.
Lebby makes sense. He gets to call his own stuff. You're never going to get out of Lane's shadow or Heupel's shadow if you're Lebby, if you don't go coach for a guy who's a defensive coach.
Yeah. And going to be the offensive coordinator for a defensive coach is a good way to get a head coaching job down the line.
Yeah. If he lets you call your stuff, for sure.
All right. I want to take a moment, quick shout out to Preston Weaver, who earlier in the show, I asked if somebody could do a meme of Mario holding the football. He's already sent it to me 5 minutes later. There it is on the screen. You dropped this king. That is going to come in very handy on the socials during Texas A&M games this year. I just have a feeling.
Thank you, Preston. You are you're a champ. Coming up on the other side, we continue our breakdown of the SEC West win totals. Arkansas and LSU both at 7, Mississippi State and Auburn, plus hitting on some huge injury news at Wake Forest and Florida. All that and more next.